What's up, everybody? Wall Street Jesus here. Lucci away again for this week. He should be ready to go next week. We'll talk a little market here. We like to get together on a Tuesday, uh, give a little rundown of what we're seeing early on in the week, and maybe help us get prepared for the remainder of the week. This type of market is a little more difficult to prepare for because basically we're seeing a lot of volatility, some big moves. And the way I like to explain it, like if I got a family member or my wife asks me what the hell's going on in the market, it's almost like you get weeks and months in a session, in one session. And that's basically how I like to look at things. There's big moves out there. A lot of people will put the label chop, right? A lot of people give the impression that there's not much range to be played, but there's some big ranges. And we talked about that in prior webinars, that if you can remain nimble, if you can be nimble and remain disciplined and be patient for certain setups to align, you can find success out there. Okay. But if you don't have the luxury, if you're not in front of the screen at all times, and don't have stop losses ready to be implemented, and not willing to take profit, even though it may be a decent profit, you can't take profit the same day. This is a type of market. For me, I would step aside, build a watch list, and start to gather names that may interest me. Let's say, put it this way: you had January, you had this parabolic move, and I'm sure I'm not even talking about flow here, okay? Because you guys know flow and sentiment, that's my bread and butter. But if you guys are using other things, if you're new to trading, new to investing, anything you were itching to buy January and now you have it at a discount, you should start to at least pay attention to the price action and see if they're setting up well. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that today, because at the same time as the news has been negative, scary, frightening in a sense, right? A lot of nervous anxiety out there. We're starting to see little by little the ingredients of a bottom being set up. Okay. And if you talk to a bear throughout the day and you mention that, he's going to shoot it down and give you every single reason why you may be wrong. Okay. But those are actually the reasons we can even actually put the thesis to work that a bottom may be in play. Here's what I mean. Okay. You got the tariffs, right, that have been feeding sellers into this market. I mean, every day we hear about these damn tariffs, right? A lot of volatility off it. Trump losing, White House members by the day, feeding into the market the negativity. In other words, eventually this market factors all this in, and the sellers get exhausted. Okay. And that's basically what creates a bottom. When sentiment gets so bearish, where everybody has finally just given up, can't take the swings, can't take the volatility, can't take the market being up 300 and then going into the red. They just get fed up. They throw in the towel. That's when, the selling dries up, and that's where the institutions, the big guys, they come in and they're looking to buy. Okay. So that's what I'm starting to see signs of right now. There's a lot of sentiment out there, okay, that we continuously look at over the short term, because we like to trade. The way I look at it, when we're in this type of environment, one way or another, if you're a trader, you're going to have opportunities. There's going to be bear market rallies. The bear market rallies are just as powerful, if not stronger, than rallies in a bull market. Okay, so I try not to get all caught up in, are we in a bear market? Are we in a correction? Blah, 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 that you hear on CNBC constantly. Okay, the game plan changes a little bit, where you for me, you got to be quicker on the sell side, rather than letting winners run, especially if you're trading options. Anything short dated, you want to lock in those profits because they can evaporate quickly. Okay, so the game plan may change a little bit if depending on the environment. But other than that, it's good to get into the habit that we've been doing here, and that's looking to buy when sellers are selling and that sentiment becomes an extreme, right? Where it looks like the market's going to crack, it's going to roll over, and people are all positioned for that. And then squeezing selling into that squeeze or rip that usually follows where those bears get trampled. All right. Today was one of those days that I was in kind of no man's land. Because yesterday was a day that I was looking to get aggressive. As a lot of you know, members out there or guys I talk to on Twitter, a lot of things were lining up on the sentiment side coming into this week over the short term. Put the calls elevated. Some of the retail put the call stuff we look at was at an extreme. The leveraged degenerate bearish ETF buying that we look at was at an extreme. So coming into the week, we were squeeze bias, right? We were looking for that squeeze. And yesterday, the flow really looked good early on, and we got that squeeze. Okay, and the market got crazy. I mean, the Dow was up 500, and then later in the afternoon started to fade. Then you had the Trump attorney getting raided and all that fed into a larger fade at the end of the day, only to be made up, again today in today's session. So today, coming into today, where I didn't have that shorter term sentiment on my side per se, right? Because we got the squeeze yesterday and it alleviated some of that bearish extreme sentiment. I'm not very comfortable, especially chasing the green we had out there today. What did we play? I think we played 2 names total. One was a quick scalp, and one was that Royal Caribbean Carnival Cruise Line. I get them confused that time. That caught a nice bet. The CCL caught a decent sized sweeper into. Oh, I got these intraday charts up. What are you going to do? Guess the job done anyhow. The CCL caught a decent looking sweeper into the weakness and one of very few names that saw some action that was red. So we had an opportunity there, and I fired into that. But other than that, everything was bright green today, and it's tough for me. What about you guys? And I always like to ask this question because, there's so many different styles of traders. This was the reaction off the Carnival, by the way, the big bet. You guys feel comfortable chasing green? Are there exceptions? See, for me, it comes down. Well, first of all, there's got to be flow there. Otherwise, I have no interest. But even if there's flow there, if I don't have sentiment on my side, I'm really reluctant to chase green, even, as a day trader. I don't know how you guys look at it. You guys, are you comfortable chasing green? Is it something you're used to doing? Throw in the chat area there if you have a particular strategy on a day like today that you guys stick to. Went right today after coming back. That midday dip was the place to buy. Yeah, and that's one thing, Paul, that you mentioned. That's one thing I really need to get better at is playing the fades. I'm just, again, it's more of a confidence comfort thing. I'm so robotic. Like there's only one style I feel comfortable trading. And I try to stick to that because I know I can stay disciplined and I do it well. But I really, like you mentioned, I really need to work on those intraday fades, especially when you have the volatility like we have in this market. Like you mentioned, you give a lot of those gains up, and even though the market's in the green, it's not up as much, and you get these nice bounces. Young is saying dip buying into red. I agree with you. Hate chasing green. Yeah, and listen. And William Struck is saying still nervous about chasing green. That's a good thing, guys. That's a good thing. You know, it it will cost you at times, but if you avoid chasing green and it becomes habit, a habit, and the habit forming, that's what happens in this game. You do it enough and you're just so used to doing it, you don't even think about it anymore. It will keep you out of trouble. Again, you're going to have losers. That's, obvious. It's not going to prevent losers, but I mentioned this and people got a kick out of this on the Saturday members only webinar. Everybody asked me, okay, here's the question, like for outsiders or new members, when they come aboard and they know I look at sentiment religiously. They ask me, the first question they ask me, well, have there been times in the past when you had a high put to call and bearish extreme sentiment like you're pointing out here and it didn't work? That's the first thing I get out of traders' mouths, okay, who are new to this. And, I mentioned Saturday and people got a kick out of it. Do traders ever ask themselves, like, how many times did I chase green or gap ups or 3 days up in a row, right? How many times have you asked yourself, how many times did you do that and that worked? They don't, they don't relate the two. And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to the probability of success. And net, if you're buying weakness or buying out of consolidation, in my opinion, I know it changed things drastically for me, you will only be better off. Okay, your P&L could only benefit from that. There's going to be a lot of frustration because the problem is on a day like today. Okay, here's the thing, like on a day like today, if this CCL, if I don't play, and I'm day trading, okay, so it's a big difference. If I was a swing trader, forget it. I would try to avoid buying green at all costs in this market. But like CCL, if that name isn't selling off and catches action into the weakness, I don't play anything today. You understand? I don't touch a thing today. And there are people making money all over the place today. There are things up. I mean, things were running left and right today. So that gets frustrating at times. And what happens? All of a sudden, even though you believe in that strategy you got, that thesis you got, and you know it's going to work over the long term and you're going to be beneficial over a longer time horizon, you deviate from it because you feel like you're missing out now, right? You feel like, yeah, maybe there's a way if I chase green, I can do this and, find success. So you abandon that. And that happens so many times, I think, just in general, when traders are trying to find a style, they don't stay committed to it. The first sign of failure, the first sign that something doesn't work. So, yeah, so a lot of you who responded to me, I guess, have the same issue. And I would say that's a good thing, especially in this market. Let them come to you. And here's another thing that I realized too. This market in particular, you get that entry literally sometimes the same day, if not the next day. That's how crazy it's been. But even in other markets, okay, where they're not as volatile and you decide not to chase and you miss that opportunity, there's always going to be something else that's at a better spot. You know what I mean? At a better spot, likely with better action. So that's the things you gotta keep focus on, so you don't feel like you're missing out. There's a ton of stocks you're gonna play. You're in the game for the long run. It's not about the one stock, the one hit you're trying to make. And that's how you try to stay disciplined in this game to avoid chasing the green. Okay, so that's where we're at today. We can dive into some of the flow, and I'll get into some of your questions. But here's what I'm seeing. Today, there was a ton of flow, okay? Primarily energy got lit up. Energy, the flow exploded in energy. It almost like we were waiting for this to happen. We were hoping it would happen into a down tape, and it happened to a gap up, and these energy names were off the chain today. Okay, some of the names that have been seeing the best action, the action didn't start up today. Okay, names like you guys know, I've been talking about it for a while. This ETP, you know, continues to catch activity. Looks like it's, prior to today, looked like it was trying to find a bottom here, but any little bit of weakness, they continued to come back. We wish we were seeing more of this type of flow and other stuff, but they continued to come back, and finally had a nice day today, up 71 cents, up over 4%. Yeah, this is molasses, this stock, so that was a big move. This COP, I've day traded this name a couple of times last week, I think. That's how much action this thing was catching. Pretty consistent action. And, boom, 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 you look, and she's up, hit $63 today. So this is what I'm talking about chasing now, okay? Where you see action come into like a consolidation over here, and you refuse to buy it, but now you want to buy this. That's a no-no. For me, that's a no-no off flow. Okay, this is where it's going to be the toughest to buy it here, but this is where you want to buy it. Same like that ETP. You see them hit it once, you see them hit it twice, you see them hit it 3, 4, 5 times, but because it's not really doing anything, you decide not to buy it. And then today, after sweeper number 25, you're going to buy it up over 17. You can't do that. You can't do that. So the flow today was predominantly, the good-looking action was in energy, all into green, okay? But I think we got a good amount of names now to keep an eye on into some pullbacks. I'm sure crude is going to have a day where there's sellers, and we could keep an eye on a lot of these energy names. Let me think of a couple off the top of my head. Schlumberger caught a little put-selling activity, nothing major today, but seeing some bull flow. PXD, that's one of my favorite names out of this. Been seeing some nice flow. Big day today. There's been a couple decent looking sweepers in this PXD, and she can move. I'm trying to think of even smaller ones. QEP. There's been some sweeper activity there. Elliott Management, I think, has a stake in this, if I'm not mistaken. QEP is the symbol there. So there's a laundry list of energy names to keep an eye on. I think we need a pullback, we need a breather, that sort of thing. But definitely a laundry list of names to keep an eye on. Okay. Aside from that, there's a lot of, I hate to say it, but the earnings activity is starting to stem up. We're going into earnings season. That's going to throw an added wrinkle into the mix, of course. Banks have seen some decent looking action. It really is a shame. But Friday, you got Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, I think Citi. So we're going to get some numbers out of the financials early on here. We'll see what the reaction looks to that. Looks like coming out of that. A couple of under the radar, unusual activity type of names seeing activity today. The problem again, it catches earnings. The airlines, like AAL, was pretty active today. You got Delta coming out early next week, and then you have United coming out, and then I think the AAL comes out after that. So these are tough. Otherwise, you look at an AAL here at this level off a wash, and it lines up for a decent setup off some solid activity. Right? It's done this a couple times. The probability that it does it or gets a nice lift off of here with some action, you would seem, it seems okay, but you have earnings in the mix of things here. All right, so something to keep an eye on post earnings, but it's tough here now, tough. So, and the other one I told you, the one was CCL. Norwegian NCLH caught a little bit of action too, but CCL caught the big bet today. Let's pull it up here. Hold on. Where is she? A lot of action though. You can see on the board here, a lot of bullish activity. There was some decent day trades out there. Facebook, they came after pretty aggressively today. I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't get in the middle of it for at least some small trades, but let me see, where did this thing go? See this cop catching big bets left and right. SPY was kind of mixed the flow. There was some protection in ETF land in general. All right, let me get the RCL. A lot of action today, and I can't track it down. It's got to be somewhere over here. Oh boy, hold on. There it is right here. No? Yeah, where is it? How come it's not on there? I don't know. For some reason, is this not updating for me? CCL. That's why. Here you go. So here's the action today in CCL. And you see the size behind this sweep, 600 grand into weakness. Stock was 62 at the time. You know, May not doesn't capture earnings. That's a plus, right? Some small tack on, you know, later in the move. But this is, yeah, Brand, thank you. I didn't realize I was typing in RCL. But this is the action, guys, that I'm focusing on. And I would recommend, if any of you guys are members or anybody out there who follows Flow, would focus on. There's not going to be a lot of it, and you got to wait on it. But action, if you get lucky, does not catch earnings because you know it's clean. It's going to be really difficult to figure out what activity is clean, not replacing stock, not hedging. With all this volatility going into earnings season, yeah, that's a tough task. Okay, but once in a blue moon, you'll get some orders like this. Okay, where they don't capture earnings, they're decent size, some weakness. I'll give an example of one that was a beauty. This Alcoa just exploded. All right, and for those of you who aren't aware of what went on in Alcoa, they came after it aggressively. They were sweeping this thing on a down day in the market. Alcoa was up a little bit. I day traded it, so I remember it well. Had a nice move off the sweeper activity. And then because the market was so weak, this was Friday, the market took everything down with it, and Alcoa went from up solid to flat. Okay, gave back all the gains. And they just continued to sweep it throughout the day Friday, right? That aggressiveness where they keep coming back for more. And the most interesting part about it, okay, because when I first saw the Alcoa action, I said, oh, I know Alcoa is one of the first to report. It probably catches earnings, an earnings play. The calls they were playing, the weeklies, expired literally the week before earnings. So these guys could have went out 1 week and catch earnings if they wanted to, and they refused to do that. You understand? Like that's just beautiful when you see stuff like that. The issue is you're not going to see a lot of that. You know, you're not going to see a lot of it. But they came back Monday morning. They swept it again. They did some rolling on later in the day, and then today there was more flow there. I don't know how much of it was clean. But up another 3 today. Crazy move in this AA. So if you're wondering what's the best of the best, cleanest of the cleanest type activity out there to stick with, to look for right now, that would be it. Sweeper activity that, if you could get lucky enough, avoids earnings. It'll likely come in weeklies or maybe some of these tech names you got that report later in the quarter and stuff like that. But that's your best bet. Okay. Otherwise, I still think we have the same setup I've been preaching throughout this whole thing. Okay. And that's when you get some weakness or consolidation. Okay. And you got sentiment lining up to an extreme on the bear side. You see any little remnants, you see any signs of buying coming in, selective, whatever the case may be, that would be a spot where you look to fire. It's going to be a tough thing for you to pull off. It's not easy to pull the trigger in that time because that's why the setup is solid. The sentiment's bearish everyone's bearish, everyone's thinking the market's going to roll over, and then you wake up the next day or the day after that, and you got a squeeze of 40, 50 handles. All right. So what happens is eventually, okay, here's the problem. Eventually, the riffraff catch on. That's the problem. What happens is eventually the riffraff says, you know what? I'm done with this protection business. You understand? I'm done with it. I'm not falling for it again this time around. And that's where you see the market likely roll over. But I think what's going on now is everybody had so much opportunity to lather up in protection. Everybody's protected out to wazoo that a lot of these measures of sentiment are there for like major bottoms. You see at major bottoms, not all of them there, but really close. Okay, so something to keep an eye out on. Something to keep an eye on. I know it's kind of out of the box from what everybody's talking about right now, right? Everybody thinks chop, this is volatility I've never seen before, bear market, whatever the case may be. But there are signs, for me, there were signs, some signs of a bottom, and we'll get the true test on weakness again, I think. On weakness, we'll get the true measure of things. Anybody have any questions on any of the stuff we mentioned, flow and stuff like that? Mention a couple names you guys played today, whether it's off flow or anything interesting you see out there. And yeah, we may see that rotation. Not a lot of you guys, including myself, have been begging for, right? We've been talking about that rotation. Maybe we get it into some of these commodity plays and stuff like that. Hoping anyway. What'd you guys play today? Anything good? Oops, what'd I do here now? Hold on, let me click on this. Yeah, the overall market. Listen, right now we were looking at that stuff too. If you guys remember, when traders, investors get anxious, right? When they become fearful, they're unsure. They migrate to some of the most liquid things out there, and we're seeing that too. We're seeing a lot of extreme readings on indicators where money's flowing into the most liquid major ETF type things. And that's because you see, it feels like everything's correlated, right? Market goes down, everything goes down. Market goes up, everything goes up with it. Eventually, what we'll see once the squeeze part is over in the market, you'll see some outperformance in individual names, sectors, stuff like that. We're not really seeing that yet, but that, usually that comes. So if you're playing the overall market, I think there's nothing wrong with that right now, because here's the issue too that a lot of people don't take into consideration. There's nothing worse than, let's say you got the setup you want, right? Everybody's bearish. You see some flow coming in, you see signs of buying, and you're looking for the squeeze. You decide to buy, I don't know, Facebook, okay? And you get that squeeze the next day, and Facebook, doesn't squeeze as much. Or sometimes these things catch negative headlines. They're down on a squeeze day. There's no worse feeling than that. You want to kill yourself, right? So that's why, playing the overall market and playing the major ETFs or ES is not a bad thing. You can stay nimble. They're liquid. And a lot of these names too, you could see the premium on these options are just out of control right now, out of control. So you really got to be careful on what you play. James is saying, just scalps. I have trust issues with the market. James, everybody and their mother right now. And how could you not, though? How could you not, right? But I think, you see what you're saying there, James? I think that's out of everybody's mouth right now. And from my experience, when everybody is saying the same things, you know what happens. You know what I mean? So I'm hoping the flow can be a guide in a sense, but I'm worried now we're running into earnings season and we're going to get messed up here. Because before that, prior to that, there's some signs out there. We spoke about it. Like, I had, if you remember the last time we spoke via webinar or whatever the case may be, I really didn't have any names at all to mention to you. You know, now little by little, there's more and more names, right? There's some energy names. I'm talking about the Royal Caribbean today. We'll see if they stick with that. That ILG has been seeing some decent action. But the problem we're going to run into now is earnings. And we know that a good chunk of that action is not legit. That's the problem. Anna's saying when SPY goes up, TVIX goes down and vice versa. Why is that? TVIX, that's a play on the VIX, right? So basically, I don't think it matters what SPY does. Usually when SPY goes up, volatility will come down. Not all the time, though, but usually. But that's a measure on the VIX. So, Anna, you got to look at the VIX to get a gauge on that. But what happens is when you get a rally in SPY, protection, right, the fear gauge, as they call it, which is the VIX, will head lower, and that's why that TVIX will head lower. Ari saying, any thoughts on what, Ari? Would you ask? Oh, a lot of unusual activity in AXL. Yeah. Decent action there. Decent action. I get that and the AXTA confused, but what they buy? Oops. There we go. This is an auto part play, right? If I remember correctly, isn't this an auto? Yeah, right. AXL. There's been some decent action. There's been a nice little lift here, but there's been some solid flow. Definitely. We've been talking about this name with I get them confused. This is the other one I get it confused with that also saw some flow, AXTA. So you can see these things. Some of these things starting to lift a little bit. They're starting to act better. They're starting to get attention. These are positive signs. These are positive signs here. It's not all about the Facebook, the Netflix, and all that stuff. It's okay if they go higher, and when the overall sentiment out there is favorable, they're going to trade higher with it. But I want to see, them start to get involved in other parts of the market, because I know it's not going to last if they just continue to play high beta. Energy is a good sign. Some of the commodity names, Alcoa, FCX, Freeport has been seeing a little bit of activity. So it's slowly stemming up, slowly. Not as aggressive as we would like, but slowly. WMB, Ari's mentioning, had chatter today, Ari. A couple of guys in the room traded it today. There was chatter, that buyout chatter, I think. So that saw some action today, oil related. There was a lot of oil stuff out there. There was at one stretch, Devon, DVN, that saw some activity today again. Nice pop. So, but here's the thing with these things. You've heard me say it before. We need to see them by weakness. It's all fine and dandy when these things are up, okay? But like somebody mentioned in the room today, these things are suicide when you chase green. There is no group worse than chasing green rather than energy, right? Suicide. So, and we need to see them, like I like to call it, stay committed. Consistent activity. Like the COP over the last, I would say, week or so, maybe even a little bit longer, up, down, it didn't matter. It always saw flow. Always saw flow. PXD, same thing. It's not just they're chasing green. They'll buy. It was down the other day. This day, I think, reversed lower, and there was some activity there. Somebody's mentioning Waze, mentioning Hess. That's been another one they've stayed committed with, too. So, like I said, the list is getting longer, right? The energy list is getting longer, and that's a good thing, because I'm telling you, this group has been out of favor. And if you ask anybody, especially who's traded off low, if they could eliminate one group that they traded last year, it would be energy hands down. I guarantee you 99% of the losers people had off flow was in energy last year. I mean, it was disgusting. Okay. But what usually happens is that turns around this year. Could be a big year. You know, could be a big year. Maybe the second half of this year can turn into a big year for energy. So we got to keep an eye on that, and see how the flow looks. But they are tough. These things, they are tough. What other names you guys got here? Let me scroll back. Edis played Micron today. Micron had a little bit of action. Micron, as you know, always sees activity. We didn't see any Tepper sweepers there, but saw some activity. Micron had a nice little bounce. Facebook, I know Zuckerberg was running his mouth today, but there was interesting action, all one-sided. All the sweeper activity was call side in Facebook, predominantly all day. And then as Zuckerberg started to open his mouth, they started to step on the gas a little bit, and you had a nice little move here, you know? So that's one of my regrets today. Even though it was green, I see that the swarm of bees come in. I like to get in the middle of it for at least a quick hit, you know? Quick hit. Trying to think of other names today. What do you guys got? Let's see. Twitter. I know a couple guys in the room play that. That was a play off the Facebook too. You could have, right? Twitter. Yeah. So you had that move with Facebook. So William Struck is in SRPT. Yeah, Bill, let me ask you something. Well, we could talk about this on our own time, but here's the thing, okay? And you're going to get away with it, knock on wood, because SRPT, they don't lose, right? We know that already. They never lose in this thing. But what possesses you to buy it here? What the other sweeps prior to that, you didn't like it? Is that what it was, or what? You decided SRPT, you bought it today? What about the sweeps down here? You didn't like those sweeps? You bought it yesterday. I think it caught sweeper activity yesterday too. But my point being is here, you know, here's where you had nice setup there. And, you know, usually you're money like that. I'm just bringing it up. But if you're going to listen, if you're going to cheat, this is the name to do it with, without a doubt. But SRPT is an animal. The action in the name is incredible. One of my favorite biotechs. I'm not a big biotech fan. Did you guys see that Sage today? I know you members saw that, but did you see that action today? So the story in Sage, they hit it a couple times down here with sweeps, okay? Then they hit it yesterday, and then they hit it today again, and they canceled out of a conference, and this thing exploded. Supposedly, it was weather related. That's why they canceled. But got up to almost 190. And there's a big story behind this Sage in regards to flow. There was some big time call buying in this thing twice, and it came before two major gap ups. You can see back here. You see these two gap ups here? One, they hit that here, they caught that, and then they bought it again up at these levels and caught that. So whatever wise guys out there playing Sage, you know, is trying to compete with this SRPT being a money shot. Two biotechs, when you see action in it, I guess we got to jump. What else? Trying to think of other names. Pay yesterday, big winner off action. It was aggressive activity, guys. Really aggressive. They were buying Jan calls throughout this whole mishmash down here. They ended up accumulating about 28,000, almost 27 in high change in Jans, though. So you figure you have some time, you can keep an eye on it, that type of thing. Maybe they hit something closer and you can look at it or take it more serious. And then you get this buyout news. Incredible. Couldn't have that, right? But there are a couple names. I posted on Twitter too over the weekend. There are a couple names that the flow's been looking better in. And I'm telling you, you know me, I'm optimistic. I'm a bull at heart. I know when to be cautious. And I just think right now, with what we're seeing sentiment wise, it pays to lean bullish when people are bearish right now. Doesn't mean chase. Doesn't mean you go crazy on a day like today and buy everything, because you think the lows are in. We could chop around here for a little bit, even if we don't head lower. These are wide ranges. But this market is doing a whole lot of nothing as it's trying to find a bottom, just big ranges. And the best thing, the most constructive thing it's done, okay? What you're not hearing from everybody feeding out all the bearish headlines all day long. This parabolic move here, or whatever you want to call it, this melt up January, where sentiment got to ridiculous bullish extremes. I put the call screaming sell readings, for crying out loud. It washed it all out. Done. It took this to do it, but it's done. You guys ever look at that AIM, a sentiment indicator, AIM? Well, if you could get it anywhere, sentiment trade. It's pretty popular. What is it? Advisor, investor model. It's pretty popular. You could probably Google it. That was up at bullish extremes, sell reading for a lot of this move into January. And, we're getting bullish signals out of that now too. So things are looking good. Anybody have any questions on anything? Doesn't have to be flow, anything, trading, sentiment. I'm trying to think of what I wanted to hit on. There was something else I wanted to hit on. One point I wanted to hit on before I go here. I'll probably remember after we close up shop. Anybody do any buying today? Swing-wise? Besides any day trading? Anybody seeing? Oh, yeah, ML, I'm sorry, I missed your question. GLD, there was some action in today. Hold on. I got a little write-up on that trade alert had, which would probably be the easiest thing for me to do for you. Hold on. I saw a little bit of action. What? Come on now. Why is this not working here? This Twitter could drive you nuts, with this search feature. But anyway, GLD there was one combination type play. And let me see. I think something hit the board too. Oh, that's not today. Yeah, you can write here. You can write your question there. How do you pronounce your name? Hilola? You can write there. I see you writing. Yeah, you can ask questions right where you're writing there. No problem. Yeah, so there's been some GLD bull flow, basically. There was a combination type play, ML. You follow me on Twitter? You follow Wall Street Jesus on Twitter? I'll tweet it out later on for you when I dig it up. Okay, yeah. I'll tweet it out for you, I promise. I just screwed up the questions. Hold on. There we go. XLF and AAL swing. Yeah, Andy, that AAL, that's the type of stuff I like. Anything you're going to have to, you're going through the fire with the Delta earnings and then the rest of them. But, I like that. See, this is the stuff I like to look at. This is the stuff I like to look at. Because I remember, put it this way, everybody was so bullish this AAL up here. Everybody. Like I remember CNBC, what was it? One of those shows, Fast Money or something like that. They were all screaming bulls on AAL up here. And now you get this, and like, no one even wants to go near it anymore. But if there wasn't earnings, like if the action didn't catch earnings, this would be my type of thing right here. Susie saying, besides Sage, any other biotech standouts? Yeah, there's been a couple. SRPT, that's been moving lately, but SRPT, some nice action again, real nice action. What else caught action? INCY had some action. They missed approval, and then they rolled those calls. But there's some call activity there. Another one is PTLA had a sweeper, not a bad looking one. Yeah, PTLA. I don't know if you know that. What are the biotechs? There's been a few. There's some bullish activity. REGN, I think it's REGN. Yeah, REGN. Had a big day the next day after the activity, then sold off. But saw a couple decent looking sweepers there. So I don't think he was playing for that next day. Who knows? IBB. I think XBI caught a size buyer a little bit lower. I posted that on Twitter. I think that was Friday into the selling. Fold has had a little bit of flow. The best flow, Sage, here's why. See, and you guys know me, one order can mean anything, right? One order could be a hedge, could be just some guy rolling the dice. I like to see names that get hit a couple times, especially in this mess, because it shows me they have an interest, right? They have a real interest in the name. They're excited about the name. So this is what caught our eye in the Sage. Now, great, you got to understand too, these options are a disaster. They're not liquid, right? The spreads are a catastrophe. So this is where you put in a lotto and you hope you make some money. If you lose all your money, that's what you were looking to do. You don't want to get too crazy with these things. But here's what I liked about the Sage. This was 6 days ago. Okay. This is a name that never catches sweeper activity, by the way. So that's worth mentioning in itself. So you get a little guy creep into some a sweep into Sage, right? That catches my eye. Now it's something you got to keep an eye on. Okay. That was 6 days ago. That was the end of last week. I think it was Thursday. One of those days. And then you got this guy into strength come back and, dish out some big premium there. Pays $8 in premium. Aggressive sweep in a name like this. I just told you how awful these options are. So this guy's pretty aggressive. And then, this was the kicker today, right before the big move. You got another sweep there. So this is 3 orders deep here. And, that's why when you see things like that, a lot of times you get, this type of performance. The problem is when they go higher after the first sweep, you don't want to chase them, and that becomes an issue. But this hung around here a little bit before it went. But the best one's SRPT. There's no better biotech name than that. Off action. You get at least a trade off the activity no matter what. And that's been the case. Obviously, it can fail at a point in time, but the best biotech off sweeper activity has been SRPT. Absolute gold. Absolute gold. You trade options, not stock. Yeah, well, I recommend you do that in biotech anyway because they're dangerous. I mean, look at this one. Okay, this caught some action, INCY. If you bought the stock instead of the calls, you get lumped up a bit. If you put a little bit of money in the calls and you were hoping to click on FDA approval, you lost what you put in. And, it's just a little loser. No big deal. So, but sometimes you can get lucky. You can get lucky in these biotechs. Some are just nice trades and then some are gigantic winners. You catch the right one. Like, look at this. All you need is one of these. Make up for all your losers in biotech. Go from 60 to whatever the hell it went. 60 to 1 to 200. So, yeah, well, how do you find them? If I knew the answer to that question, I wouldn't be talking to you here. But, I mean, the way I look at it is this, Hilola. You roll the dice in biotech, right? You're hoping to get lucky. With sweeper activity, the odds get tilted in your favor of finding success. That's the way I look at it. It doesn't guarantee you to find success on every play. But the odds now have tilted in your favor after the sweeper, right? So in other words, let's say Sage was 50-50 to go higher from here, right? 50-50 chance it goes higher or lower from here. Now that it's caught some aggressive sweeper activity, unusual sweeper activity, what, maybe tilts the odds 60-40? I know a lot of guys who make a living out of that. The people who continuously lose money in this game are the people who look at it and say, all right, it caught, Jesus said it caught sweeper activity, so that makes it 95% chance I'm going to make money with it. That's not, that's not what I try to preach here. Sweeper activity, tilt the odds in your favor, or that's an edge. Just that little bit helps if you can manage your bankroll properly, right? You manage your risk properly. That's what guys who are in the business long enough, we refer to that as an edge, just increasing the odds in your favor. Because over the long term, if you do manage your risk properly, net, you're going to make money. So but again, it takes discipline to stick with that approach, right? You got to be willing to bounce back from losers. You got to manage your money properly. I know a lot of people who can't do that. So that's the biggest problem there. Andy's talking about LCI. May puts got hit hard today. They were way out of the money, right? Lottos. I'm not, the puts going into earnings season, Andy, they're a tough read right now. They're a tough read. We're going to see ETF put action. The semiconductor SMH ETF that caught some size put block today again. But they've been doing that a couple quarters. It's been the right move. But in earnings, especially a market like this, you're going to see people protect. So I wouldn't read too much into it. Again, right now for the flow, if you had a chart, okay, from the cleanest action out there, what you should really pay attention to, in the middle, what maybe is worth a play, and then the bottom. The top would be aggressive activity that's coming into a name and doesn't catch earnings. That stands out like a sore thumb right now. Again, Alcoa, perfect example. Royal Caribbean today, perfect example. Okay, so that would be the best of the best activity going into earnings season now. The middle tier would be sweepers and sweepers only, aggressive activity. They catch earnings, but you might find a trade on the run up into the number type thing. So again, hypothetical. Let's say CRM seeing some sweeper activity, aggressive sweeper activity, not blocks that are replacing stock. Aggressive sweeper activity that can create some momentum and maybe a tradable move into the number. That doesn't mean they're going to blow away numbers. It has nothing to do with that. Okay, so that would be the middle tier of action. And then the bottom tier of action is put buying and block call activity. You can take that right now and flush it down the toilet bowl. That type of action. Useless. Absolutely useless. And you might even have to throw ETF activity in that category. I don't like to do that immediately, but that might be the case if that gets messy because you got a lot of hedging going on. SPPI. Who mentioned SPPI? That had a little bit of activity and had, I think, some chatter too. Chat room chatter, as they call it. So yeah, there's been a little bit of flow in biotech, as you guys can see. A little in energy. Some selective names, and we'll see. We'll play it by ear. So here's the story coming out of today. Flow looked good. You guys could see I pulled up the board a couple times. There was a nice pace out there today of action. Real nice pace. Nice little spy put block snuck in right after the bell, looks like. Yep. But you can see nice pace of action, a lot of action out there, right? A lot of lightning bolts. That means sweepers. That's a great sign. But the problem is now we have rallied. We have squeezed. This is day 2 like this. Yesterday, the early part of the day was similar activity. So really active. We got the squeeze. Now we wait for it to set up again. That's my opinion. So now going into tomorrow, we're looking for, some maybe selective flow. So in other words, maybe the markets can hang around, float around, and we see them buy names like a Pay, like ILG, like that AXTA, some under the hood names, catch some aggressive flow. We can look for that stuff. But on the sentiment side, we're Trump headline away from a wash and them racking it all up for us again. But my advice right now, and me, I preach this a lot, but more than ever, when sentiment aligns, I think into weakness, you have to try to lean bullish here, Where you become a little cautious is after rallies like, yesterday, today. That's where you want to trim some stuff, take off some risk. But as there's some selling and you could just feel that bearishness come on, I think that's the time to start getting bullish again and looking for entries. And then but that's the textbook play, right? In the playbook. And then you sell into this. Okay. You don't have to load the boat. But instead of chasing on a day like today, you wait for that setup and then fire at something into that setup. All right, your risk reward there is going to be a lot more favorable than it is here. But this market is trying to find a bottom. This market is trying to find a bottom. And we'll see. That's why I don't like to make predictions, because, this could be a temporary bottom. And we could just chop around, maybe grind a little higher here or whatever the case, and this bottom holds for a bit. But, things look a lot different come summertime, right? Midsummer. So I don't like to get wrapped up into the predictions, because that's where you get caught with a real bias, and then you're missing the real signals out there. And I don't want to do that. In this type of environment, I like to take the information at hand day by day and then adjust accordingly. Young has a good question, it looks like here. Is momentum created partly by the market makers having to hedge after call sweep hits? That is the momentum that's created on an intraday basis, Young. Yes. So in other words, when you see this, let me go to a minute chart. When you see, okay, see this? And this is, you can't draw this up better for a day trade. And a lot of us played this today, okay? You had a strong market, everything's green, a lot of us don't want to chase, and then you have a name like this selling, I guess because energy was running, they were selling these tranny cruisers and airlines and all that stuff, and then all of a sudden, you get an aggressive $600,000 sweeper that steps into this blood, right at the lows, guys. Literally, right into this, okay? And you can see the volume spike there, right? You can see the reaction off of that. All right, so that volume there is the market maker hedging, okay? But the momentum created after that There was a little more buying that came in, and there's other people who are looking to get long the name, and that snowballs into this. You know what I mean? It snowballs into something bigger. But what I'm talking about momentum or some orders a lot of times is that if you, like an ETP, for example, okay, when you see that type of buying come in, we feel like it's worth a play no matter what, because this guy's supporting the name. Every time there's weakness, this guy comes in and is aggressively sweeping more calls. Guy, girl, group, whoever it is out there, syndicate out there. You know what I mean? So every time this thing has a little bit of weakness, I remember this day, this thing looked like it was ready to get flushed down the toilet, the whole group. And they came right in to sweep this thing, to support it. Weak again, buying. Weak again, buying. So what happens is we know there's a real buyer out there. And that's not only going to create some intraday momentum, but that's going to create, or the likelihood is, it's going to create some sustainable momentum over the short term. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now. You know, that's kind of what we're seeing right now. So yeah, there's always, you're going to see some intraday momentum, and depending on the type of the action, you know, how much, what the size of the sweep and all that stuff, that all depends, and you get a gauge of what kind of move you could see. But you will always get some sort of reaction off an order like this. And the answer to your question is, yeah, the market maker hedges, and we see all sorts of shit, Yang. We see sweepers come in before a big block gets placed. And that sweeper was just front running that size block. He got in front of it. You know, we see algo sweepers before rumors and chatters hit the street. You know, so that's why, as I like to say, we have a, you know, us in the room, we have a sweeper fetish. You know, it stresses urgency. Somebody's more concerned about getting in the position than what price he pays. You understand? A block, a lot of times that block is negotiated at a price. You understand? We want that degenerate. We want that guy to, I want to get filled now. You know? Sweep all the offers. I need it now. And that's what creates momentum, both over the extreme short term and depending on the action, you know, over the course of days and weeks sometimes. You know, so at the same time, Yang too, and this is what I try to preach, you don't need that player to be right on his bet to make money off wise guy activity. I think that's a big misconception. You understand? In other words, ETP, whoever's buying that, you don't need him to be right by expiration for you to make money as a trader. You understand? This is already profitable without that guy being right. You don't need to see that news. You don't need to see, you know what I mean, that event for it to be like, oh, that's why he bought it. A lot of times we do see it. Okay. There are many times we don't see it. But what people fail to recognize is there's a trade in between. You know, and if you play accordingly, you'll have a lot more winners than losers. Did I get everybody's question before I wrap it up here? And listen, if you're new, anybody new, go to wallstreetjesus.com. It's the easiest thing. If you're laying around, you're bored, you got nothing to do, you click on the strategy tab here. Even you guys who are new members, I suggest you go into here and just sift through this stuff. Short blogs will tell you everything we talk about on a day-to-day basis. Okay, from what a sweeper is, why it's important, why we pay attention to it, how to use the flow as sentiment. If you're not even interested, let's say you trade ES, right, and crude and just futures. Wise guy activity could be a powerful tool for that. Just sentiment alone. It's not a stock picking machine. That's the last thing it is. So if you're interested, you can look through this stuff. I suggest if you are new members, you do that. You become a little more familiar. All right. And if anybody's new to the webinar, if you're interested in getting an idea of what we do, we got a free 3-day trial, no credit card. Okay. So you don't have to cancel. You don't have to do any of that crap. You get 3 days in the room. You get a little bit of a feel, an idea of what we're looking at. All right. I'm on audio video throughout the day, all throughout the day, talking about the action as it comes in. Lily and the rest of the gang are trading everything under the sun around it. All right. And you will get free access to private Twitter with that membership if you decide to sign up after the 3 days. Okay. If you're interested in just private Twitter and private Twitter alone, we spun that off into a separate entity. It's $59.99 a month, and you will get access to private Twitter in itself. Okay. Private Twitter they're all the same alerts in real time, a little bit of commentary around them, some open interest and sentiment stuff. The biggest thing that's missing from private Twitter is the audio video content, obviously, access to Lucci and all the traders trading off the flow and everything around it. And, some of the special stuff we have with the webinars and all that stuff. All right. And if you have any questions, you guys know where to find me. But like I said, you could do the 3-day no credit card to get a feel of the whole ball of wax if you're interested in that. All right. Hilola saying I bought Trade Alert standard package, helps only for stock, not so much options. Trade Alerts for options? No. I mean, Trade Alert is a little hand involved, but if you're into diving into the data, that's who powers our data is Trade Alert. They're the best in the business when it comes to sweeper activity. I wouldn't use anybody else. So that's where all these alerts come from. Everything I post, that's where it comes from. Trade Alert, a lot of the charts, a lot of the sentiment stuff, a lot of that. All right. Yep. Ricky, have a good night. Everybody, members, have a good night. Anybody who's new, have a good night. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Good luck the rest of the week.